And now we come down to our last but not least farm. And this is where I was in a state of confusion for 4 years. I figured out this summer. I did not realize there were 2 Welker Century farms. So I had been inviting Bobby and Juanita, who I had never met either. And I actually met Juanita in the spring on a school bus. And I was like, oh, I've been looking for you. So then I go to Leatherwood this summer and sit down with my lake neighbors, and they're like, oh yeah, we've got a Century Farm. And I'm like, oh, yeah? And then they finally explained to me that there's 2. So I did send a letter of apology to Bobby and Juanita and said I didn't realize you were in Montgomery County, and Mr. Welker here tonight is with our Houston County Century Farm. And I apologize for that. I guess you can just blame it on the blonde hair, So, but we do appreciate y'all, and I'm really excited for y'all to share your story tonight because we haven't seen y'all before, so please come up.
For those of you that were at the Historical Society meeting the other night, this is going to be a condensed version compared to what I gave over there. But there's a lot of history around a lot of these old farms in Houston County. And it's real good to be able to share with each of you some of this information. The Welker Farm is located in the very northeast corner of Houston County. You go about a mile east and you're in Dixon County, a mile north and you're in Montgomery County. My great-grandfather, on November the 25th, 1850, his name was John William Welker Sr., he purchased 150 acres of land from John J. Patterson. This was the beginning of the Welker Century Farm. The land was in 2 tracts. One that was 100 acres at a price of $350. The other tract of 50 acres at a price of $50. And I'd like to know which 50 acres in that 150 was just $50. I'm sure it's some of the hill land that probably wasn't as valuable as some of the other back in that time. This land was part of a larger tract of 640 acres granted to Alexander Nelson. My great-grandfather, like most all landowners back in that day, owned a few slaves. I have a copy of the 1860 Dixon County slave census, and at that time he owned several young slaves. The census only listed the sex and age of the slaves, and for him it was listed a female age 38, a female age 14, a female 12, a female 6, and a male 4. This would cause one to wonder if a 38-year-old was the mother of the younger children. Also, and by the way, I have, I was going to lay them out, but with the breeze blowing, I'm not going to do that. I have several documents if anyone wants to see. I have a copy of the slave census, a copy of the bill of sale of this young slave I'm fixing to tell you about, a copy of the original deed, and some other documents that I'll talk about later. The deed of sale dated January 20th, 1860 shows that John William Welker Sr. sold a slave girl 8 years of age named Sarah to R.S. Nesbitt for the sum of $630. Now I assume this sale took place prior to the census since no 8-year-old was listed on the census. Early in the 1860s, the Civil War began. By 1863, the Union Army had made its way to Tennessee. The Union Army accused John William Welker Sr. of giving support to the Confederate troops. For his punishment, they burned all his buildings and took all his animals except one old ox. They took John William prisoner on December 16, 1863, and took him to the Union prison at Rock Island, Illinois. This is based on the registry of prisoners dated 1862 to 1865. John William's wife, 16 and 13-year-old daughter, and 11-year-old son were left to survive with only one old ox. This being December, I don't know how they survived, other than the 1850 census listed him as living next door to his brother Thomas. However, we don't know how his brother Thomas was affected by the Union Army. Information passed down through the generations had John William imprisoned for almost a year. Since John William was released prior to the end of the war, it could have been because he was a civilian, or he could have been traded for a Union prisoner. John William Welker Sr. lived until August 25, 1909. He died at the age of 87. As John William Welker Jr. took over the farm, he raised 9 boys, no girls, on the Welker farm. My dad, Walter Welker, was the 8th son, or next to the youngest son. As the older boys left home and found other work, my dad, Walter Welker, stayed home, worked the farm, and took care of his mother and dad. John William Welker Jr. lived until September 24, 1936. He died at the age of 84. Dad continued row cropping the farm. He also had cattle and hogs. He continued to farm until he had some accidents and his health began to fail. At that time, my son and I stepped in and began to give a lot of help to Dad, and at that point the farm became a cow-calf operation.
Oh.
Dad lived until March 19, 2001. Died at the age of 97. The farm continues today as a cow-calf operation. I spend about 3 days a week at the farm doing various chores. It's an ideal little farm for cattle operation. We have a spring coming out from under a big limestone rock. It never slows down. Don't care how dry the weather gets, it continues to run the same all the time. We also have a spring-fed creek that runs through the middle of the farm. If you raise cattle, you know you've got to have water to raise cattle. So water is one thing we don't have to worry about. The farm today supports about 30 cows along with calves. There's a lot of history for this old land. I enjoy sharing it, man. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm proud to finally get to hear from the Welker Farm, and I hope y'all will come back to see us next year. I want to say again how much I appreciate all of our Century Farms, and I ask again, like I pick at y'all every year, to go out and recruit your friends. You can find some more Century Farms. I know there's some out there. If there's anything, a little bit about myself, for some of you that don't know me, I work for the UT Extension Office. If there's anything at our office that we can do to help y'all, please don't hesitate to call us or come by. Thank y'all for coming tonight and sharing your stories with us.